Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Couch Trip. That's Eddie Reece. My name's Billy Courtright, where we're going to talk for the next 30 to 45 minutes about therapy for everyday life. Eddie and I were just having a quick conversation, and the topic that we were talking about is an interesting one. When I heard the two words, I said, oh, this is going to be exciting. And the topic that we're going to delve into today is imposter syndrome. And when Eddie brought up the terms imposter syndrome and we started talking about it, I'm like, to my knowledge, what imposter syndrome is that feeling of I don't belong, or I'm not qualified, or I'm just uncomfortable purporting to be or do what I'm about to be or do. It's that feeling of being uncomfortable in one's own skin or out over one's skis, so to speak. And I'll be honest, in my field over the last 3 decades, there's been many a times, whether it was my first speaking experience or leading my first team or a big presentation for which there was a lot on the line, I tend to wonder, am I the right guy? Am I the right guy for what I'm about to do? And in some circumstances, time will tell. But I think that's a part of growth. But that's just my layperson understanding and quasi definition of imposter syndrome. And for our listeners and viewers, you may have a similar interpretation of that term. But I can't wait to find out from a clinical perspective, from a professional perspective, what don't I know about imposter syndrome, or what could I be getting only half right, if not wrong?
All right. You mean to help you with that?
I would love it if you would help me with that.
Well, welcome to Team Red today.
Yeah, go Falcons, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Go Dogs.
Maybe that's what it is. Something like that. Yeah, that is the color of two of the football teams. Imposter syndrome. Yeah, this came up as a topic for the podcast out of a session I had yesterday, and it comes up a lot with clients. Sometimes it's a straight up, I feel like an imposter. A lot of times, though, folks talk about it in terms of I feel inadequate or not good enough, which is exactly the same thing. Maybe a little difference might be that you might call it the imposter syndrome if you take I don't feel good enough with I must be fooling everybody. I just got a promotion. I just got a raise. I just got a new position. I just, you know, achieved something, but I don't feel like I deserve it. So interestingly, because I haven't done this yet, and almost 50 podcast episodes we've done, I actually took some notes during the session to remember what my client was bringing up, because it was just so typical, and normal, what people normally say. And then I before we came on, I went and pulled up, I asked AI to tell me what the imposter syndrome is. And what I hope to do today is to kind of, talk a little bit about what most people think it is, and then I'll add to that in terms of what it looks like to me psychologically, emotionally, and then what to do with it. Because this is where the general idea of how to take care of the imposter syndrome goes off tracks, is what you do with it. So what came back from AI here is that the imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments, have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. And that's right. That's right on target. I don't feel good enough. They're going to find out eventually. And when clients who struggle with those sorts of feelings come into a session, quite often they'll say, I just got like I said, I got a raise, I got a promotion, I just got hired for this job, whatever it might be. And that brings all this to them. Like, oh my gosh, now I've got to perform, now I've got to prove, and you hear the fear in their voice from it. So there's that sense of inadequacy. Then there's from the definition, it says self-doubt There's a constant questioning of one's ability. This shows up as what's typically called overthinking, which is a whole nother sort of thing. All
Mhm.
this will tie together, you know. Oh my God, I'm not good enough. Okay, well, to keep from being found out, I've got to do, and then I've got to say, and then it has to go this way. And you have all of these things running around in your head that need to happen in order to be okay. What's really going on here is back to our uh, discussion on anxiety. You're feeling threatened. You know, you feel like, oh no, I'll be found out, which neurologically is going to be that sense of I'm threatened. So I feel anxious and scared. So my nervous system is dysregulated in that state, and therefore I need to regulate it. And so I'm going to do that by figuring all of this out. That's what the overthinking really is. When I come up with a good enough plan, then I can relax. The problem is when you're doing this, you're actually threatening yourself even more
Right.
because I've got to make sure that I do this when I, sign on to the podcast and make this point and do it. Just what that is, and this goes to our conversation on the kindness dialogue. I'm not saying that to myself as much as there is a part of me going, now, when you better, so you're threatening yourself in order to reduce your threat. Does that
Right.
make sense? You
Well,
following? And this is what we all do. It's like, oh no, I feel anxious. So I'm going to yell at myself about what I need to do to not feel anxious or how stupid I am for being anxious, and that'll calm me down.
right. Yeah, that's
You
never a good
know,
idea.
which is also the definition of an addiction,
Mm.
right? Oh my God, what a night last night. Oh, I feel so bad. Oh, what? Here, let me get a drink. Take the edge off. Let me do what caused me to feel this way in order to not feel this way. Oh, it's
I never
just,
understood that. And I've seen people who drink to get rid of hangovers. I don't understand that. That's the
well,
last thing I want anywhere near my face.
I'm explaining it to you why they do that, because they got drunk or they started this planning out how to, perform well and not be found out as a fraud. They're doing that because they feel threatened. They're
Mhm.
dysregulated. Right. Oh, I had a bad day at work, so I'm gonna go get a drink. I had a bad day at work. I'm dysregulated. I'm being mean to myself. I feel threatened. I'm anxious. We can call it any of these things we've talked about. So I feel like a fraud, or I'm afraid I'm going to be found out, is the threat that we throw at ourselves.
Right.
So I've got to reduce that threat. Another piece of definition is attribution of success, believing that success is due to external factors. I was just lucky, or, they didn't have anybody else to pick from, or,
Right.
I don't know, it was a fluke. You're not going to hear, well, I got the promotion because I've worked really hard at it, and I've done an excellent job. Many times have you ever heard anybody say that about an achievement? You know? So even when we diminish things, that that's shaming ourselves to a lesser degree that I'm a complete fraud, but it's still that threat to ourselves because we we don't want to feel ashamed, which is what it really is. I don't want to feel ashamed, and so I'm going to shame myself. I'll diminish it. Well, why,
Right.
own it. Fear of exposure, anxiety about being discovered as a fraud, right, which we've covered. And then perfectionism is what they say this is, setting extremely high standards. And that's dead on. And that's the same thing as I'm going to do this in a particular way. And if you notice when you do that, you don't ever make one plan. Okay. It's, well, I'm going to do that. And then I've got to make sure that this, and and you've got this multi-layered thing going on when you walk in to whatever the threatening place is. And there's no way in the world. And you're not even experiencing the moment that you're in. You're up here reading all these screens,
Right.
and repeating the plans to yourself. And so you're threatening yourself so much that your anxiety goes up, but you don't attribute that to anything you're doing to yourself. You say, well, it's because I had to do this presentation in front of the big boss. No, no, you were anxious because you were beating the crap out of yourself to do all of this exactly right and don't screw it up. And so you're really beating yourself up, and then you're terrified, and then you beat yourself up harder. You double down. Now you're in a conspiracy theory. I believe this thing that isn't true, that the boss is just sitting there going, oh, here comes this idiot. Let's see what kind of stupid crap he's going to throw at me today. No, the boss is like, "Oh, great, we're gonna hear from Eddie about how we're gonna do this."
Right.
And he's looking forward to it because it's a important project to him, and I've
Mhm.
done a great job so far, but I don't know that. So that's a conspiracy theory. I believe I'm a fraud, and I have all this proof. And if somebody says to you, "No, man, you've been doing great at work," they present you with a fact, what do? You
Dismiss it.
flip it. That's not true, right? So, I mean, one of the things that's gotten me excited about this topic is how all these different things that we talked about, the anxiety, feeling threatened, the kindness dialogue, how we shame ourselves, what shame is, all of this is really kind of the same thing,
Yeah.
which is great news because it's all sort of the same thing. So if you have an addiction or you have the imposter syndrome or you're struggling with anxiety, feeling like a fraud, thinking nobody really loves you, that you're all alone in the world, whatever all that is, it's all the same thing. It's a big conspiracy theory because you've been lying to yourself, because you've been beating yourself up for so long. And so the solution to all of this is to regulate your nervous system and go into that kindness dialogue and explore who you really are. You're not going to beat this with facts.
Right.
And if you know anybody that's into some sort of conspiracy theory or even just talking about what a horrible person they are and they're not, there's no fact in the world that's going to make them go, what was I thinking? Of course, I have been doing a terrific amount of work, and that's really awesome. And yeah, I'm good at this. I'm not going to do that. And
No.
so you're doubting yourself. You don't accept your successes. You're terrified of being exposed as a fraud, and so you got to be perfect so that nobody will find out. Again, that's covering your shame. If I feel shame, I've got to cover it up. If I feel shame, I can express my shame, which I don't know is shame, as I'm a fraud. And so we have countless ways of saying to people, I'm shame based. I feel like a fraud. I got drunk again last night. I'm just worthless. I'm no good. You know, I'm ugly. I'm fat. I'm stupid. All of that shame, but we don't think of it that way. So it says these things can pop up when you have a new role. So you get a new job or you get a promotion, it pops that up. You go into a new relationship, it pops it up. Or comparisons, you compare yourself unfavorably to peers, role models. And there's a whole nother thing that people do that they don't realize is the problem that they're facing. They compare themselves. And when they compare themselves, typically we think of comparing ourselves as extremes. So somebody says, well, everybody else has it all figured out. Everybody else does just great with this. Nobody else worries about this. Why do I do that? I'm terrible. I'm awful. I'm no good. Right. Or we go the other way. How is it that I just know what's right about all of this? And how is it that everybody else is just so stupid about it? Okay. So you got to go one way or the other with the comparisons. And typically we think what we should do instead is just go, well, I'm okay, as I am, or I'm all right. But that again is a comparison. And we've mentioned this in other podcasts of, affirmations. They don't work, I'm okay just as I am. That's a comparison. You're doing the exact same thing. And that's one voice going, "Oh, I suck." And the other voice goes, "Oh, no, no, you're okay just the way you are." The voice that feels the shame is just gonna roll their eyes. That's why the facts don't work. That's why I call this, I started calling this all a conspiracy theory. You believe something that nobody else believes. You're the only one that believes it. Nobody and if you've ever struggled with, your sense of self and you've ever said to somebody, I just don't know what I'm doing. I'm just not any good. Nobody really loves me or I'm just suck or however you might express that. Have you ever had anybody say back to you, God, you finally figured it out? I mean, this is what
Thankfully,
we've all
no.
been trying to tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody does that. They always tell you something different and then you never believe it. So
Yeah. One thing I
go
have
ahead.
heard
Yeah.
is, and I'm not sure if contextually, but the first reframe I ever got from a mentor about imposter syndrome was the phrase "pressure is a privilege." And have you ever
Mm-hmm.
heard that?
Hmm. Oh, yeah, millions of time, and especially working with, sports.
It was an interesting way to kind of place a positive spin on what you're describing as anxiety to say, hey,
Right.
the fact that you're feeling pressure, the fact that you're about to do something that, may or may not be important, but at least you put a lot of value
Yeah.
in it, was something I remember the first time I was feeling out of place. That
Mhm.
was something that a mentor said to me. And I remember it to this day. It always
Yeah.
kind of made me think like,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
you're here because you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and again, in the role of the person that's going, somebody tells you something like that, you may buy into it, but it won't last, right?
Yeah, because until you internalize it, right? I mean, it's superficial.
Well, more and yeah, and the way that you internalize it is by regulating your nervous system, learning to be kind to yourself, quit beating yourself up. I mean, and I sometimes speaking of imposter syndrome, I go, Eddie, you don't ever say anything new. You just, whatever it is you're talking about, you go, be curious, be kind, be compassionate. It always turns into that. And my response is, well, it does. All of these things have kind of the same cure, if you will. It's not a cure, but it's It's a different way of living your life.
Right.
So, yeah, pressure's a privilege. When I'm talking sports, it's true champions, that is what they live for, okay, is to feel the pressure. When they feel the pressure, that's when they come alive. That's when they go, "I want the ball." Most of us are not wired that way, right? And it's not gonna help a whole lot to go, "Well, I'm feeling the pressure and this is awesome," because it's not, because it's interpreted as a threat to my life, which again isn't true. It's a 3-foot putt. You're not gonna die if you miss it, okay? But it feels that way to your nervous system, alright? So, overcoming the imposter syndrome, this is where things go really awry, I think. Um, Recognizing that these feelings are normal and shared by many individuals. Okay. So, somebody comes in with the imposter syndrome, and I go, "Well, we only need a few seconds. I'll fix you here. Your feelings are normal and shared by many individuals." How's that going to help? Okay, same thing with the next one. Talk about it. Well, share experiences with trusted friends or mentors who can provide perspective. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm a big fraud. Well, you're not. You do really well. I mean, they don't give promotions to idiots, and you're just gonna go, oh God, somebody else that doesn't get it. Okay, so that's why these things don't help. So, what was it? Reflect on achievement. Okay, keep a record of accomplishments. Okay, great. Here's my list of 300 accomplishments. They're going to find me out at some point. You can't change the mind of a conspiracy theorist by giving them a fact. Okay,
One convinced against their will is of the same opinion still.
exactly. So it just doesn't work. So that's what I got back from AI. Okay. So
So the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is we are not going to be replaced by robots just yet.
not yet. I mean, it sounds good, but it's inadequate. It's just, it's not quite a fraud, but it's just a little off track. So some ways to take a look at these feelings that you have. One is that, again, it's a coping mechanism. You believe you're a fraud in order to not be a fraud. And that just sounds odd when you state it that way. I don't wanna feel like a fraud, so I know I'm a fraud, but you're not a fraud. Well, why would you even think you're a fraud?
This is interesting. I don't know if you're gonna go there, and I hate to interrupt, but
Yeah,
to me, is
no.
this the our own personal way of making sure we're at our best, or making sure we're 100% alert, or making sure that we know, like, it is interesting, but it almost, at least for me personally, at times it brings out the best. I mean, it kinda, if I
It
think I'm not good enough, I'm gonna try to be better.
well, yeah, I have this belief that an awful lot of uber successful people are uber successful because they're running away from their shame. They're trying to overcome, they're trying to make up for, they're trying to get mommy daddy love. If I become the greatest in the world, then dad has got to come around and say, son, you did a great job. I mean, very typical story of the father who says, you're going to become a professional athlete, and drives the kid relentlessly. And no matter how well he does, dad's going to pick it apart. And your dad's doing that to make you better. And sure enough, you get better. Okay. And eventually you become the greatest in the world. And your dad says, hey, dad, we won the Super Bowl. And then your dad's like, Yeah, I saw that, son, congratulations, but, I mean, what were you thinking on that play, you know? It's never good enough. And so that's how the conspiracy theory gets in our head. That's how this sense of I'm a fraud gets in our head. And so we have to cope with that because the simplest thing I know to call that is shame. I am irrevocably damaged. Okay? No matter how many Super Bowls I win, my dad's going to pick out the mistakes I made. That's what he's going to focus on. So it's never good enough. That's what shame is. And I can't ever be good enough, no matter how hard I try. But I'm going to keep trying. One day, I'm going to win my 40th Super Bowl. I will play, in 40 games. 40, so for 40 years, it'll
That'll
be
be
the most
some kind of a record, yeah.
outstanding thing and anybody's ever accomplished. Then he will go, "That was awesome, son. You were fantastic," and that be it. But no, never gonna happen. So we do this overthinking. We go to this imposter syndrome. We go and we drink. We go and get addicted to anything else. We overthink. We drive ourselves crazy so that we won't be crazy, so
Well,
that we won't feel that way. So we beat ourselves up to keep ourselves from feeling beat up.
is there any truth to the idea, and where my mind is going is a fear that I have, if ever, and I have had imposter syndrome, at least self-prescribed.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but my fear in that state is what you look for, you will find. So if you
Sure.
expect failure, if you expect to to
Mhm.
to to embarrass yourself, if you expect to drop the ball or whatever the case might be, whatever
Right.
stage of life you're in, that can be pretty bad.
Sure.
Or at least not counterproductive. So, but again, toxic optimism isn't the answer either. I mean, but there is something I read from a guy named Trevor Moawad. He talked about neutral thinking and just,
Mhm.
eliminating the negative, eliminating the overly positive, but just get yourself into a I'm okay. I'm
Well,
breathing in
I'm
and out.
okay is not neutral.
Well,
I'm
that again, he's
okay
not a
is
doctor, he's an
positive.
author.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, think of a continuum. Positive, negative. Okay. Okay, well, I get it. Go way over here, that's not good. Go way over here, that's not good. Okay, I understand that. So then the answer must be to be in the middle. And that's what Trevor's saying. No, the answer is to destroy this continuum entirely. You don't go there. You don't play that game, which for most of us feels impossible. Well, then where do I go on this? No, no, no. This doesn't exist. You want this to not exist for a moment so that you can regulate your nervous system. The whole reason you're using this continuum is because you're dysregulated.
Mhm.
Your shame is coming up. You're feeling inadequate. You're afraid you're going to be found out. That's why. So you have to do something entirely different. And that always makes me think of Monty Python on their TV show. They would do a skit and then the guy would come on and go, now for something completely different. You know, that's what you have to do. So notice that you're overthinking it. Which means you're not you're just thinking about it at all. Oh god, and it's that's what you wanna notice, but we don't notice that because we think that's exactly how we're supposed to feel or something, and we go straight to, "I gotta figure this out." So it's a coping mechanism, okay? I'm looking at my
I wanna throw something
jump in
at you,
here. Yeah,
and, I have no idea how you're gonna react to this. Same author, but I just searched something that I
okay.
quoted, and I'm like, I wanna give this because I want Eddie's perspective. Okay? Now, there's no context here other than to say, if you wanna go look for a Trevor Moawad book on neutral thinking. Go for it. It's interesting. But I'll say this. Your behavior is a predictor of your future. Sometimes behavior can influence thinking. Neutral thinking, the acceptance of the past as real, but not predictive. What you do next determines your future, not how you feel.
Okay, to me, and apologies to Trevor.
He's passed since, so he's okay.
Yeah, okay, he's dead, so I said whatever. That's more of a positive affirmation,
It
you
is.
know?
Absolutely,
And
without
it
question. It's the
and
idea that
it's
I
just
have and it
it's not gonna help. I mean, when you can really experience your shame so that you know what I'm talking about when I say shame, you're not just going, "Oh, yeah, shame, that's where you believe you're just not good enough." No. Shame is this horrible, horrible place emotionally of, I am completely and utterly a waste of protoplasm. I mean, it's and in a therapeutic setting as the client, I want to share something with my therapist, but I'm terrified to do that. And the terror comes from, if we put it in the context of the topic of this discussion, I'm going to announce that I'm a fraud. I mean, how ridiculous would that be? You know, and the experience of doing that, oh my gosh, and I've done it so many times in therapy. It's always the same. My therapist, who has never shown me any sign of shaming me in any way, shape, or form, is going to just go, "Oh my God, now I know the truth about you." And oh gosh, Eddie, I can't help you. I really see what a complete waste you are, and it and the experience of that is that you know that's going to happen. I mean, that's how terrifying it is. And so that place, the reason I'm describing it, that place when you hear these positive affirmations, "No, no, you're doing great at work." From that place, there is nothing you can do but roll your eyes because they don't know what I know. And the reason they don't know what I know is because I don't really even fully know it to begin with, and I certainly have never expressed it to them. And if somebody did express that to you, you would never even think about saying, "But no, that's not true," because you experience the depth of what that is for them, and the general response would be, "Oh my God," you know, it's horrible. And that's where you've got to get to change this. You have to, in a sense, from the framework of an imposter syndrome, you have to not tell somebody that you feel like a fraud because that's reporting on this. You're not sharing this with them, and you're not sharing it with yourself. You have to experience this, share it with another person who doesn't then shame you. And this is back to our discussion on the podcast on shame, to just go, "That's horrible. That sounds awful. I can see how awful that is." And leave it at that and sit with you as you experience that. That begins to change your nervous system a bit and doesn't fix it in any way, shape, or form. But you sort of, the way I describe it to a client is you sort of maybe kind of begin to think that maybe that's not true.
Well, you touched on something a minute ago that you hadn't you said in the beginning of the episode, you started using the term, "I am a fraud," in referring to an individual, and then just now you said, "I feel like a fraud," and
Mhm.
that's a real distinct difference
It's
because
huge.
to say
Yeah.
that someone feels that way seems empowering because it's like, if okay, that's a feeling, there's something we can deal with. There's something we can work with. Where does
Right.
that feeling come from?
Yeah.
What's going on in your mind? What is the self-dialogue? What is the self-talk?
Mhm.
I mean, to me, that's encouraging. Like, hey, if it's a feeling, well, hey, we can change our feelings.
Well, yeah. Problem is most people say feel when they mean think, because it's not a feeling, you know. If I c and then this is the one
Is it a belief?
example.
I mean, that's even worse.
Yeah, believe it's somebody comes in and goes, I'm really sad, and they do it just like that. Well, I don't look sad, do I? Oh gosh, I'm really sad today. I don't look sad. I'm reporting something that I think I feel, but I'm not feeling it. Okay. But if I come in sobbing uncontrollably, I don't even have to say it. That's the difference. Am I sharing this or am I reporting on it? Okay. So that's the difference. So you've got to feel it, you've got to share it in order to begin to make changes. Yeah. So what were the other notes to just grab my attention? Okay, so in order to get to that place to where you could experience what that imposter syndrome is emotionally, which is shame, you've got to regulate your nervous system enough to where you'll stop all of the things you do in your head to stay away from it. Right? That's what the nervous system regulation is about, because all this happens because you're feeling threatened, you're dysregulated, you're jacked up, and you've got to calm all of this in order to come back into your body. I tend to think about thinking is out here, and you've got to come back in here to experience the feeling. Um, and it begins there. But gosh, I can go on and on and on about this for hours.
How much
But it's
this sounds remarkably similar to just general comfort zone conversation, you know? And I'm not saying that getting outside your comfort zone is the same thing as imposter syndrome, because I don't know that it is, but there is something to the effect of anything you're doing the first time, any change, it's going to be uncomfortable until it's not, right? You're gonna
if you're shame-based and it triggers that shame. Because think about it this way, because what you're saying is, okay, if it's something new, then you're gonna be uncomfortable. Well, it would be n it was new for me to see the Grand Canyon for the first time. I've never seen it. That was not uncomfortable at all. It was I I can I know there's different awe and, feelings of awe, that one really stands out because it was the biggest one of my life at that point. So
I
that
think
wasn't
it's still the biggest
uncomfortable.
canyon.
Yeah, I mean, when I walked up to the rim, the wherever it was I walked up to the canyon, I couldn't see the canyon at all until I walked right up to the rim, so I had to be much higher than everything else, and so it hit me sorta like in those drone shots, where you're flying over ground and then pop, the ground's gone. I mean, I sobbed uncontrollably. It was just
The
like that. I mean,
magnitude
it
of
was
it.
pure awe. So that's not uncomfortable, that's brand new. So it's not the newness, it's a newness or even something you've done countless times that triggers this sense of shame that you're going to hear from your dad, to use your example of, yeah, okay, great, but you're going to hear that voice, which in a sense is your voice that you learned from dad in this example. You're going to beat yourself up. The thing that we're really afraid of almost all the time is what we're going to say and think of ourselves. We may say, well, I don't want everybody to think I'm stupid. That's true. But where's the real damage going to come from? That's when you say everybody thinks I'm stupid. Because first of all, nobody thinks you're stupid. Okay. You think you're stupid. So that's what you're really afraid of. You're going to tell yourself that everybody thinks you're stupid, which means you're stupid. That's what you're afraid of. So again, you're not telling yourself the truth. That's the imposter syndrome. You believe a lie. That's what anxiety is most of the time. You believe a lie. When people come to me for anxiety, they're really coming to me because they're afraid of feeling afraid. They're anxious about feeling anxious. So I tell them, I go, you've got an anxiety disorder, so to speak. And they go, what do you mean? I go, anxiety is not your problem. Okay. Anxiety is, that happens. And that's good because it's why we survived. Okay. What you're struggling with is you're afraid you're going to be anxious. Okay. And so that makes you think the fix for this is to not feel anxious, but that's not the fix. The fix is to actually feel anxious and then not be anxious about it, because I'm going to teach you how to feel anxious without it scaring you. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Because if I go, I'm going to put you in a situation that's going to make you feel anxious, and you're going to go, oh, I'm anxious, and you're going to handle it. That's what champions do. Pressure is a privilege. Being afraid. Pressure is being afraid. Being
Yep.
afraid is a privilege. And when I'm afraid, that doesn't scare me, which
Right.
sounds like, what?
Oxymoron a little bit.
Yeah. When I'm
That's all right.
afraid, it doesn't scare me to be afraid. I want the ball. I want that feeling. I want it to come down to me.
So our AI companion missed the target on overcoming imposter syndrome. But as a way to tie a bow on our conversation, what are some ways that someone might recognize, maybe, because I'm taking for granted the fact that I know what imposter syndrome feels like. Somebody else
Mhm.
might not. They might just be like, I'm just generally anxious or ashamed,
Yeah.
or if we're going to truly try to acknowledge and share and remedy in some way or seek help, talk a little bit about what that process might actually be like in your experience.
Well, as I've said, it comes down to, the nervous system regulation, the learning to reframe and talk to yourself differently. But before you can do that, you have to realize, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm lying to myself. I'm beating myself up. Oh my gosh, I've got this big presentation and I'm really nervous about it. And, I don't want everybody to think I'm stupid, when I give it. Okay. You have to catch yourself and go, so you're afraid they're going to think you're stupid. Now you're in the kindness dialogue. Realize you're not just saying that. You're telling some part of you who is nervous about it. Oh, oh my gosh, you got this big presentation coming up. If you don't do it right, they're all going to think you're stupid. You know? And so you've got to address that, but you've got to realize you did it. And that's the hardest part. I mean, it really is. It took me years, and it takes years, to go, okay, that's what I'm doing. And catch it. Takes years to be able to catch it regularly. And after 35 years of or so of therapy and practicing these sorts of things, I mean, I do. I catch it regularly. I mean, I exhale, lower the threat level. I'm not saying that to myself. I just do it. All right. And then, sorry, I didn't mean to tell you that you were stupid. Oh yeah, I know. That's tricky. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're not stupid. You do really well with this stuff. Yeah, I know. But that old stuff never seems to go away. It doesn't now. Really doesn't. So there's just this conversation between guys that care about each other and want the best for each other. That's what it eventually turns into. And it never stops. I mean, I do that all day long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see you do it.
Which is the real goal if you want to stay goal oriented. That's the goal. The goal is not to get rid of your anxiety, to get rid of your imposter syndrome, to, never hurt again, always have a good relationship or, great life or be happy. No, no. Learn how to treat yourself and then other people when things don't go the way you want them to, or you feel a way you don't want to feel. That's the trick. So
That's a good
that's my
trick.
little sermon for the day.
And I'm glad you gave it. I'm glad you gave it. We knew that this topic, well, at least I knew that this topic was going to be stimulating and exciting, and it was for me. For
Yeah.
all of our listeners and viewers out there, we hope that the imposter syndrome was interesting to you as well. Perhaps it opened your eyes or ears to something new. And who knows, you may have some questions, and feel free to reach out to one of us or anyone here at the Couch Trip, and we'll do our best to respond either in email, text, or in a future episode. Again, if you're finding this content enjoyable, valuable, helpful, please like, subscribe, follow us wherever you consume your podcast. It helps us with the algorithm. It helps us to get the word out. And if you're enjoying this or you'd like to share this with a friend, don't keep us a secret. We would love for you to share the episode that sparked your interest or converted you over to our Couch Trip fandom with someone that you care about. And if any one person, as we said, listens to or views an episode and makes the decision to reach out to some professional in their community to seek a little bit more understanding about what's going on in their head and heart, well, then this has been a real worthwhile endeavor from these two cats. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Couch Trip, Therapy for Everyday Life with Eddie Reece and Billy Courtright. I will let Eddie bring us home with the last words, but we look forward to seeing you again real soon. Bring us in, Eddie.
Yeah, several thoughts flying around. There's something in there just trying to get out of oh, well, one thing just popped up. The word I was looking for was transcend. And so
That's a great
it
word.
was in there. Yeah, you want to transcend this thing of comparisons, the picture
Rise above. Go
rise
over.
above. Yeah, it's this is sort of you just sort of float up and go someplace entirely different. So yeah, that popped in my head. But no, I was just thinking how I was noticing, kind of my excitement and energy. I finally got a good night's sleep last night, but there's such desire for me to do these podcasts because I want more kindness in the world, and especially the way things are now. We're recording this late 2025, so if you're seeing this 10 years from now, go back in your history books and see what was going on. But gosh, more kindness, and I really do believe that the things I talk about are a terrific way to achieve that, and so I wish I could share this with everybody at the same time. Another thought that was in there as we record this, we're not finished setting the infrastructure for this podcast up. And what I mean by that is websites and social media. And the thing that popped in my head is one of the things we want to do is to have a transcript of all the podcasts and rewrite that into a Substack column. So I'm on Substack, but I haven't really posted anything. But so it more self promotion of um, go read what wound up being a kind of a column, a Substack post about this, and it's I find it helpful to do that because you hear the same thing but with a slightly different twist, and sometimes that helps. So that was all that was floating around in there.
It was great. It was great. Yeah, we're this is a way for us to take Eddie's work, his life's work, and his perspective, and impact as many folks as possible in the most efficient manner that we know. So yeah, it does have legs, and it's evergreen. And unlike a TikTok post or an Instagram story,
Yeah,
these are not
yeah,
depreciating assets. These will live.
yeah. I sure hope
Within
so. Yeah.
within the YouTube and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, or Audible podcasts, pantheon. So with
Yeah,
that, ladies,
it would be nice to have more likes than a typical cat video, you know?
the cat might have us. The cat might have us.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be hard to do, but
Well, we're
yeah.
still having fun, so we'll keep coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye for now.
See ya.